is CNN.
David Duke is trounced in the race for Louisiana governor. But what's next for Duke? Should George Bush be looking over his shoulder as Pat Buchanan considers a conservative challenge to the president? And waiting for Mario, will it ever end? And could the indecision itself hurt Cuomo in a run for the White House? Welcome to Newsmaker Sunday. I'm Gene Randall in Washington. Those questions and more for Republican strategist Charles Black, who will be part of George Bush's re-election effort, Democratic pollster Mark Mellman, and political analyst Kevin Phillips. But we begin with this day's top story, the gubernatorial election in Louisiana, and an interview with David Duke.
From Washington, this is Newsmaker Sunday.
In Louisiana Saturday night, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Edwin Edwards led right from the start of the vote count. And by the time it was over, the former three-term governor had won by a landslide with more than 60% of the votes cast. Republican State Representative David Duke had apparently failed to outrun his controversial past as a leader of the Ku Klux Klan and a neo-Nazi.
Right doesn't win every battle, but right always triumphs in the end.
Tonight, Louisiana became first to turn back the merchant of hate, the master of deceit. Tonight is the first night of our journey to decency and to honesty and to fairness and to justice and to respect and to honor and, yes, to hard work.
Mr. Duke, I know you had a late night in Baton Rouge, so thanks for being with us. You were saying right up to the end that you would win the election against Edwin Edwards, and you were saying in that victory there would be a message. Well, in fact, you lost by a lot. Now, was there a message in that kind of defeat?
Well, we got a lot of votes. I mean, we were tremendously overwhelmed by power. We were outspent by millions of dollars. We had no endorsements. Every political machine in the state worked against us. The media went ballistic against us for days and days and days, and really the people of my state were threatened with economic blackmail. They were said if they voted for me, they'd lose jobs in industry and tourism, and people liked what I said. But the message, I think, still went out. Considering the tremendous opponents that we've had and the power that came against us, I think we did very well. The people of my state believe in the things that I'm saying.
Let's look at some of the political realities. You never got the undecided voters you expected, the so-called hidden vote. Almost half the Republicans who voted against you. What went wrong? You weren't running against a saint down there. You ran against a man with a checkered past of his own. Doesn't that make your rejection all the more noteworthy?
I don't think so. I think, again, a lot of powerful people came in. Every organization in the state mailed out letters, signed, saying that they supported Governor Edwards. Every particular group, even the National Guard received letters from the Commander-in-Chief of the National Guard in our state. The military should always be separate from politics. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, I'm not a sore loser. I hope Edwin Edwards has good luck, but I know that the message, perhaps the messenger was rejected in this race in Louisiana, but the message wasn't. And the people of this state and the people of this nation believe in what I believe in. We've got to reform the welfare system. We've got to require welfare recipients to work for their checks, get responsibility in the system. We must reduce the illegitimate welfare birth rate, or we don't have a future in this country. We've got to realize we need neighborhood schools, community schools, forced busing, and devastating education. We've got to realize that government's not going to solve our problems with more taxes. So the people believe in what I believe, and every poll shows that, and we're going to have more candidates to talk about these issues across America.
Mr. Duke, what then do you suppose it was about the messenger that people rejected?
Well, again, we had my past, I guess my controversial past, but I guess the fact that I got so many votes with that past shows that the message is very strong, that the people believe in the things that I believe in. And we've got to make some changes.
But in the end,
we've got to stand up for human rights. I mean, I believe in, again, I want to talk about issues here because that's the critical thing. People believe in this country in equal rights for everyone. They're tired of the reverse discrimination, the racial discrimination they call affirmative action and quotas, and whether or not George Bush signs that bill, of the Civil Rights Bill, that bill was a quota bill that even takes away the very protection of being innocent until proven guilty in this country. And we're going to have a change in that subject, and it's going to come politically, whether it be next year But it will come eventually in American politics, and I will continue to speak out for the issues we've got to talk about.
But what you seem to be admitting today is that you apparently were not able to outrun your past.
Well, I did outrun my past. I did overcome my past. The support that I have, we have a national movement right now based on the principles that I'm speaking about. Everyone has the ability in their life to change. Everyone has the ability through Christ to change and make a better life for themselves and to accomplish things. You know, if we all looked at our past and we looked at the things we've done wrong or things we've changed, none of us could accomplish anything.
All right,
I've accomplished a great deal. I've accomplished politically what nobody would have dreamed that I could have accomplished politically.
What then comes next, Mr. Duke? Where do you go from here, politically?
I hope to be a spokesman for these ideas and issues.
But other than being a spokesman, will you, for instance, get into presidential primaries in the upcoming season?
I don't have any plans whatsoever to get in those primaries at this time.
Are you being encouraged to do that?
I have been encouraged to do that, and I'll leave my options open, and I would not rule any of that activity out. Who is encouraging you, Mr. Duke? Where is this encouragement coming from? My supporters. I've received about 40,000 letters from all over the country the last 5 or 6 days, and about half of those letters urged me to run. And I have not, again, I don't have any plans to run for president. I don't know if I'll support George Bush or not in the Republican primaries, but I would support George Bush or any other conservative Republican over a liberal Democrat. And there are a number of conservative Republicans who may run in the primaries. Patrick Buchanan may be one. There's others who may get in. Jack Kemp, I don't know.
Any encouragement to go into New Hampshire?
I'm not inclined to go into the New Hampshire primary. I'm not inclined to run for president at this time. I'll keep my options open.
How about running for a congressional seat?
I've got a lot of time to think about it. That's a possibility in the future. That's all possible. But the main thing is I'm just going to keep the ideas going. I will be speaking all over the country, talking about these principles, talking about these ideas, and articulating what the American people want to hear, and they've been waiting to hear for a long time.
Mr. Duke, how would you characterize your constituency in Louisiana and across the country? How would you term it?
Well, I did win the Republican vote very dramatically, and I think that my constituency is conservatives, also a lot of Democratic working people.
Didn't the majority of Republicans vote against you in Louisiana?
No, a majority did not vote against me, and every poll that we've had on that basis shows that the Republicans did indeed vote for me in Louisiana. But my constituency is both Republicans and Democrats, working people, middle-class people, professional people who realize the government's going in the wrong direction. There's a movement going on in this country right now, much like what happened in Eastern Europe, a movement toward less government, less taxes, more individual rights and responsibilities, and that's what we need in America. And I outline all these programs. I'm not going to be in politics, obviously not in government after January, but those who want to see my outline of my programs and policies can write me at the Louisiana legislature in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'll send them a complete outline of what my policies and programs are for the country.
When you contact Edwin Edwards, as you say you will, what will your message be?
I want a conciliatory message of one of encouragement to him. I hope that he heard the tremendous number of voters who did vote for me and some of their concerns. He said during the campaign that he was concerned about welfare reform. He started echoing some of my sentiments in those areas. He said he was against quotas per se. And I'm going to ask him to try to, again, be a governor for all the people of the state, not just some of the special interests that he did represent. And, I'll give him every benefit of the doubt. I'll give him encouragement, and I'll do anything I can to help heal any division that exists in the state right now and to help move our state forward, because Louisiana is suffering and our people really need a good term for the next governor.
In 10 seconds or so, does it bother you at all that so many people didn't just vote for Edwin Edwards, but that they voted against you?
Sir, whenever you stand up for an issue honestly and courageously, you're going to have opponents and you're going to have people that hate you. What encourages me and keeps me going are the people that really love me, that I've seen that I've stood up for them, fought for them, never given up, never given quarter, and I'll continue to do that in Louisiana and in America. We've got to have some changes in this country. I don't want to see this country become a third world nation. That's where we're headed. We're losing our educational system. We're losing it.
Mr. Duke,
our government's growing out of control. We've got to make some changes.
I'm sorry we've got to go. Thanks very much for being with us, Mr. Duke.
You're welcome, and people can write me at Baton Rouge, Louisiana legislature.
When we come back, 3 political experts on the results in Louisiana and on the right-wing thunder closer to the White House. Stay with us.
We don't think it's right that the presidential primaries be held and a national debate be held without a conservative voice being represented without the anger and the frustration of the American people at what's going on in Washington, D.C., being represented in the primaries.
Yes, I said, I am now retired. Yes, I ran my own business. No, I said, I do not need your advice about insurance. Yes, and this really got him. I am insured by the very same people who protected my drapery store perfectly for 28 years. Mildred, you've certainly heard of the Hartford. No, I said, I will not keep your brochure.
ITT Hartford. When you need us most, we're at our best.
Good morning, room service.
Yes, this is Mr. Block, table left. Waiting.
Yes, sir, your breakfast is on the way.
Should have been here half an hour ago.
Sorry, sir, it'll be there any minute.
You sure?
Absolutely. What was that number again?
Each year, corporate America spends over $10 billion on overnight shipping. Yet according to a report in the Wall Street Journal, $3 billion of that is wasted. If you find that kind of inefficiency alarming, call UPS. We can save you up to 40% on overnight deliveries and help prevent your profits from going up in smoke. UPS, we run the tightest ship in the shipping business.
Its mission, the survival of our government. It is one of the nation's most secret programs. A one-hour special assignment examines Doomsday Government. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Newsmaker Sunday. I'm Gene Randall. Joining me now, Republican strategist Charles Black, Democratic pollster Mark Mellman, and conservative GOP analyst and author Kevin Phillips. Mr. Black, I imagine there is a good deal of relief at the White House this morning over the results in Louisiana on Saturday. But wasn't David Duke's message straight out of the GOP playbook? And that being the case, has David Duke changed the way George Bush will be able to campaign next year, at least on some issues?
Well, certainly not. A large part of his message did coincide with what the president's for and what President Reagan has preached for many years. Not all of it, but no, having a bad messenger endorse your views doesn't taint your own message, and we won't be changing what we stand for and what's in our party platform.
Mr. Mellman, anyway, the Democrats will not use David Duke as a campaign issue in the upcoming election campaign?
Well, 12 years of George Bush and Ronald Reagan have legitimized the kind of rhetoric, the kind of racially divisive rhetoric that David Duke endorsed in this campaign. George Bush opened the Pandora's box with Willie Horton. We're now seeing the culmination of that kind of campaigning.
So, yes, it will be a campaign issue for the Democrats. Mr. Phillips, what do you see as the net result of this election campaign in Louisiana?
Well, I think the key is whether David Duke takes his politics of frustration on the national plane in 1992. It sounds to me like he's getting ready to run against George Bush. I think he's got a lot of trouble he can make for Bush and the Republicans, not least on the quota issue. And if it's Pat Buchanan and David Duke out there bothering Bush, he's got a problem.
Let's look at Pat Buchanan, Mr. Phillips. You have called him David Duke's respectable cousin. Buchanan says he is now leaning toward a challenge to President Bush.
Here is a man who ran on a pledge of no news taxes, who's raised them, who I think is signing on now onto a quota bill, who's responsible for the fastest spending at the federal level and domestic spending since the New Deal, who's given us 3 of the 4 largest deficits in history, who's talking about a new world order when a lot of Americans think we ought to look out for America first.
Mr. Phillips, what's the message there for George Bush?
I think it's a very powerful indictment. I think Pat Buchanan knows full well the frustrations of what you could call the sort of right half of the Republican Party, and he's preparing to agitate those frustrations. I think the president's vulnerable on a lot of those issues, and I think the worst thing that the Republicans face is the possibility that if Buchanan strikes a chord with these issues, that a lot of voters in the middle could drift to the Democrats because these things would no longer keep them Republican.
Mr. Black, the president has taken his share of political shots over the past few months. The economy, the election results in Pennsylvania, now Pat Buchanan. Anything more than an irritant here?
Well, despite having taken all those shots, he still has a record level of job approval, and among Republicans in this country, he has a 90% job approval. So there's no constituency outside the Beltway for a a challenge to the president's renomination, and neither Pat Buchanan nor anyone else can threaten that renomination. The reason being we have a conservative president who has pursued conservative policies, and that's what makes the people in our party happy.
At the same time, I am told there may be some White House effort, or an effort on the part of some White House operatives to get Buchanan to change his mind. Now, is that true?
Well, I haven't seen that yet. I mean, we may, some of us, be talking about it this week because some of us who are friends of Pat hope he doesn't do this. He's too valuable to the conservative movement where he is, but certainly the president and his staff are not losing any sleep over this. Their renomination is guaranteed.
Mr. Mellman, as a Democrat, are you sitting back enjoying this?
Yeah, the president's approval ratings have fallen 30 points in the last 6 months. He's been rejected in Pennsylvania. He's got his conservative base collapsing. In the last couple of weeks, the White House has been transformed from the OK Corral to Cape Fear. There's panic. They don't know how to react to it. They have no domestic policy. They have no political strategy, and they have no one in charge. We couldn't be happier.
But a 60% job approval we still have.
Not anymore.
Did you rehearse that line, by the way, Mr. Mellman?
No.
Would you offer that line to the candidates?
Candidates don't need my help with that.
Are the Democrats the beneficiaries of this kind of intra-party squabbling, Mr. Phillips?
Well, they might be, but on the other hand, you can never underestimate the ability of the Democrats to take an opportunity and make total hash out of it. I mean, if they had somebody who was a powerful candidate at the moment, and I'm not sure even Mario Cuomo is, they might really be well positioned, but the Democrats come off a reputation for not being able to govern the country that will give the president the benefit of the doubt.
Mr. Black, we have about 30 seconds before we take a break. There is a lot of criticism these days coming from Republicans, among others, that the president simply doesn't have a clear message. They look at different things being said by different members of the administration, for instance, on a growth package, the need for tax cuts. Are you troubled by that at all as someone who will be a key player in the re-election campaign?
I'm not troubled by it, and I'm happy that the president in the last couple of weeks has spoken out more forcefully about the fact that he has an agenda before Congress, which Congress refuses to pass. It includes some economic growth measures, a jobs bill and a transportation bill, a crime package that the liberal Democrats in the Congress are obstructing. That's a clear message, and he'll keep speaking up until they pass his programs.
All right, when we come back, another week of the Mario scenario. Hurry up and wait. For some, the waiting is wearing thin. Stay with us.
Under 8%.
Good morning, front desk.
Excuse me. You've been waiting. Yes. Got to check out. I would say 14. I would say 20.
Just one moment.
How long is this going to take?
That's life. That's life. That's what people say.
Life can be maddening, goofy, or downright fun, but it's never predictable. Aflac helps your family be prepared for the unpredictable. We're the expert in supplemental insurance. Our agents work to help close the gaps in your health insurance. Gaps like deductibles and co-payments. Nobody closes those gaps better than Aflac.
'Cause this old world
Life supplies the surprises.
keeps going around.
Aflac supplies the peace of mind.
We asked California artist Ed Lister to give us his impressions of the all-new 1992 Buick Skylark. To capture the lyrical lines, the liquid flow, the dash of flair, and above all, the quality that makes this the Buick of its class. Did he capture Skylark? Decide for yourself. But one thing's for certain. Skylark is the Buick that will change a lot of impressions about Buick.
I'm trying to think it through, all right? I'm ruminating, yeah. We'll do a little, you guys like the word. You mean that I'm not entitled to spend more than 4 weeks because it inconveniences other people who might have spent 4 years.
Has there ever been such rumination? Mr. Mellman, Senator Harkin of Iowa, who's been a presidential candidate for months, wrote a very sarcastic op-ed piece for the Post last week. And he expressed disgust at the Cuomo indecision and dismay at those of us in the media who he said were paying too much attention. Now, does Senator Harkin have a point?
Well, I think that Governor Cuomo's indecision isn't that interesting a news story, to tell you the truth. I think Governor Cuomo has the right to take as long as he wants to decide. I think he will decide by Thanksgiving.
But is he hurting the Democratic field as it exists now?
I think there are some activists and some fundraisers who are not moving to other candidates, waiting for Governor Cuomo's decision. But in the end, when all's said and done, I don't think this period of indecision is going to make a lot of difference for Cuomo or for the other candidates.
Mr. Black, some Republican officials have been taking shots at Mario Cuomo for this indecision, but will voters remember that at all if he gets in?
Well, I don't know if they'll remember the indecision part, even though he is acting very selfishly insofar as the other candidates in his party go. But I'm sure it'll all be settled here in a couple of weeks and he'll either be in or out. Probably be in, which would be good for us from the president's standpoint, because this would be running against Michael Dukakis, except without the miracle. I mean, New York's a total basket case, and in fact, President Bush probably carried New York against Governor Cuomo.
Mr. Phillips, Governor Cuomo wrote an endorsement for your book, which talked about the greed of the 80s, where the rich got richer at the expense of almost everyone else. Now, do you see Cuomo being a formidable opponent for George Bush, if in fact he ends up being the nominee?
I think he's very formidable on those issues. I think he can take the record of the administration with its concern about bank bailouts as opposed to ordinary people, and worry about foreign trips as opposed to unemployment lines, and really handle that well. What I think Cuomo's problem is going to be, and I mean Charlie and everybody else are already working on this, I'm sure, is his vulnerability and his connections to liberalism in New York, and New York is a symbol of failed liberal policies. And Cuomo's not going to be able to walk away from that symbolism.
Mr. Mellman, how does the governor overcome those flaws, if in fact they are flaws?
I think Governor Cuomo is going to reaches down with his message into the values that the American people hold. The reason New York's in trouble is because this federal government under George Bush has abandoned our cities and abandoned our states. They have no domestic policy, and that's why the country's in trouble. New York's not the only place in trouble.
Mr. Black, do you have any doubts that Mario Cuomo will in fact get into the race?
Oh, I'm expecting him to get in, and we're going to have better explanations than we've heard this morning about how he escapes his record in New York. Highest taxes in the country, highest crime rate, terrible economy, double state spending in real terms since he's been there. The American people don't want that.
Let me ask each of you, representing each of your parties. Mr. Mellman, what's the vulnerability point for Mario Cuomo? 10 seconds.
His greatest vulnerability is what's happening in New York. The problem is it wasn't Mario Cuomo's creation, it was George Bush's creation.
Mr. Black, what is Mario Cuomo's greatest strength?
Well, he's very articulate and charismatic, and he can deliver a message, but people look behind that message to judge the record of people when they run for president. He's got the worst record of any Democrat.
Mr. Phillips, Mario Cuomo against the rest of the Democratic field.
Well, he should win because he's been made into such a giant by the Democratic power structure. He has the money. He's dwarfed the others during this period of indecision. Can he win in November, and could that become a weakness that others could exploit against him? I think there's an outside chance of that.
Just about 15 seconds, Mr. Black. Discouragement at the White House over the downward drop of the market over the past week?
Well, the president and everyone at the White House are very concerned about the state of the economy. We're still in recession. They're working hard to figure out what to do to help get us out of the recession, and hopefully the economy will get better next year.
Mr. Mellman?
George Bush seems to be saying, don't worry, be happy. I'm playing golf. What's wrong with the economy?
Mr. Phillips?
There are a little bit of Herbert Hoover shades here. I think George Bush has to take all this more seriously. He doesn't want to be playing the violin while things fall apart.
Mr. Phillips, Mr. Black, Mr. Mellman, thanks very much. I'm Gene Randall in Washington. For all of us at Newsmaker Sunday, thanks for being with us, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
For a transcript of Newsmaker Sunday, send $3 to Newsmaker Sunday Transcripts, Journal Graphics, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 1-303-831-9000. Your comments may be sent to the same address.
You could call one company to take your package to an address across town. And you could find somebody to take your package to any address cross-country. Then you could call a third outfit that could take your package overseas. And yet another that could take your package overnight. But there's only one company you could call if you only wanted to make one call.
At GMC Truck, our only business is trucks, and has been for over 80 years. A dedication to truck strengths and values to keep in mind. Because when you need to haul something, tow something, carry precious cargo, find new trails, or simply ride high and proud, there's nothing quite as strong as a truck. GMC Truck, the strength of experience.
The year's dirtiest campaign. The nominees thrust into a worldwide spotlight. The race for Louisiana governor. Would David Duke have done it differently? He'll talk about it Monday on Cryer & Company, 11:30 Eastern on CNN.
I'm Jonathan Mann at the CNN Center in Atlanta. CNN Weekend continues with Sports Week in Review up next, and Tom Styner joins us now with a preview.
Jonathan, lots going on, including week number 12 in the NFL. The Washington Redskins put their unblemished record on the line against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll have that. And a fight for first place in the AFC West featuring the Broncos and Kansas City Chiefs. And a change in the boxing ring. Evander Holyfield will meet a different challenger. We'll have a lot more coming up at the top of the hour on Sports Week in Review. We invite you to join us. Jonathan?
Thanks, Tom. 35 Michigan college students were arrested last night after a football victory party turned violent. Central Michigan University students set at least one car on fire. Police say the students also overturned other vehicles, set bonfires, ransacked apartments, and attacked passers-by. Police in the Mount Pleasant college town called on 10 other fire and police departments in the region to help them get things back under control. Witnesses say there was some drinking before the violence, but no one is sure what triggered the outbreak. No problem so far in the countdown for the next space shuttle mission. The shuttle Atlantis is scheduled to begin a week-and-a-half-long Defense Department mission with a spy on board on Tuesday. Weather forecasters say there is a 50-50 chance of favorable conditions at launch time. Once in orbit, the 6 astronauts will release a missile warning satellite. CNN will provide live coverage of the shuttle's launch. It is set for 6:51 Eastern, Tuesday evening. Stay with us for a recap of the headlines right after some messages and a look at the weather.
In 1844, the first public telegraph message is sent. 50 years later, Marconi invents the radio. By 1920, inventors begin experiments with television. 1933, Ronald Dutch Reagan becomes WHO Radio's first sports director. September 1957, The Floppy Show debuts. 1991, WHO Radio's Van and Connie are unleashed with their own television talk show on TV 13.
This is no ordinary seedling. It's part of a $1.3 million tree planting program from Iowa Power. The program will help beautify Iowa and conserve heating and cooling energy. This is no ordinary piece of trash. It's recyclable trash. And last year, Iowa Power recycled tons of paper-related waste. When it comes to taking care of the world we live in, many of the most ordinary things we can do today won't seem so ordinary tomorrow.